Okay, so I am going to talk about a certain assortment of cards, and it's because when I was pulling them out at random, like I was these last couple of days, I'm getting a lot of the same cards, and that's not always necessarily healthy, because then I'm just repeating myself over and over again. And what's the point of doing these readings if you're just going to hear literally the same thing every time I talk? So I'm going to start, and it's going to be some unpleasants, and then it goes into the pleasant. Devil card. What this is really signifying at this point in time is to actually have that emancipation from bondage, yes. But at the same time, maybe you're in a position and maybe you're stuck in a loop because you're not seeing the full picture and the detail. It's something that I was actually told to me is once you know what the devil in your life is, it no longer has power over you. So, what we're looking at right here is owning that side of ourselves because we all have that part of darkness within us. But do we perpetuate it? Do we stay in the loop? Or once we finally learned what it was, do we continue on with it? I don't think so. That's partly what we also have to understand when we're getting cards like the Nine of Swords. So many people have demonized this card within itself, and to get that with the devil, that actually is something to pay attention to. The reason why those cards will come up, they're not telling you that impending doom is coming. Sometimes maybe bad things do happen, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to that way. Maybe it actually is to deal with the issue. Maybe it is to finally, well, take your hands off your ears and be willing to hear and stop blinding yourself. Don't live in that form of denial because the thing is, this world is really, really good at making you actually feel powerless, putting you into denial, and denying it for others, not to believe, so on and so forth. And that is actually what the Devil card and even the Nine of Swords can represent for this particular time. So, when you look at it from that perspective, you have to realize it's using that form of discernment, trusting what our spiritual guides are saying, understanding that flow and having abundance in our life because we don't accept anything less and we're not settling, and we do need to have freedom from that loop. So the thing is, what you can really actually take from all of that is to see that devil going into the Nine of Swords and facing those demons, facing the problem, and then finally making movement, making progress with that Three of Swords, only that Three of Cups. So, what you see is a cycle. You're breaking free from that pattern. And then once you finally have breaking free from that pattern, things will start to finally move in your life, and that is when the possibilities, well, aren't necessarily endless. Let's sit here and be honest. But within reason, you finally have your power back. You finally know that you aren't bound by certain other people's limitations and expectations of you. The one thing is, we always talk about like trying to make everybody else happy. How can you do that if you're not happy yourself? And also, you're not going to be able to do that. You can't make everybody happy. You can't make everybody like you. You can't make everybody see your side of the story. But what you can do is take a look at that behavior, take a look at those patterns, and actually, well, do it for yourself. I always talk about leading by an example because there's so many people who try to go out and change the world, be revolutionary, and then they don't actually, well, do any of those things themselves. They have these high expectations of you, but yet they can't even fulfill those expectations. So, kind of consider the source when you're being preached at and people are trying to shove that way of thinking down your throat. It obviously hasn't been working for the last few thousand years, so we do need to do something different. But it can't be on a really big scale anymore. Like I tell people in the spiritual communities, don't try to wake them up anymore. Let them stay where they are going to be and let them figure it out for themselves. Because every time you do that, you find yourself going back into the loop of the false light as well. It comes into this area where you get to this grandiosity thinking that you have this secret hidden knowledge when really it's always been there and everybody does see it, they just choose not to. That's what how denial works. The thing about people talking about the fifth dimension, let's talk about that for a second. The fifth dimension is not an actual place. Trust me, it's not this love and light place. What it really is actually the fifth stage of grief. So, that's what it is. It's the 5 stages of change, the 5 stages of grief. It goes in from denial, then it goes into the anger, then it goes into the fear and bargaining, to depression, to acceptance. I talk about that a lot, and there's a reason why I'm talking about that, because, a lot of people go from 1 to 4, 1 to 4, thinking that they're going to suddenly make it to this fifth dimension and everything's going to be wonderful. Doesn't turn out that way. That cloud 9 doesn't last long. Just like any drug that you take, eventually you gotta come down. Just like anything, it's one of those areas where it holds in a balance. You gotta sometimes be more realistic about those expectations. If something isn't for you, why are you going to keep fighting for it? Why don't you just finally fight for what is actually tangible that you can do? The thing is, once you do that, you finally understand you're gonna be a lot happier. What we see with that lesson, with the Hierophant, is that is actually what makes the student the teacher, and because they're actually just really teaching themselves, and that's what makes you the leader. A true leader is going to actually tell you to actually become a leader yourself. There's no hierarchy. There's no, oh, I'm an older soul and you're a younger soul. None of that stuff exists in the spiritual realms. The thing is, they don't think about it like that. Our spirits do not think the same way that humans think. That is ego. That's the false light right there. That really might as well, if you want to go and feel that type of condemnation and guilt, you might as well keep going to church and definitely listening to that preacher who's taking your money, and then also and completely hypocritical. So, looking at it from that, be the message by actually finally just using your own discernment. Listen to yourself, because you are enough. What that leads into is, well, some people are going to think you're foolish. But the thing about the fool is they are the smartest person in the room, because they dare to be different. They dare to actually walk and create their own path. There's actually a term those terms, oh, when a door closes, a window opens. Well, I hate to tell you that that's bullshit. Sometimes there is no other door. Sometimes you gotta pick up that sledgehammer and create a door for yourself. And then once you finally can create a door for yourself and you create your own path, you are paving your own way, but you also are paving the way for others, inadvertently. And that is where you finally see change. We change ourselves and give the inspiration, and that is what connects us, and that is how we change the world. The one thing is, I've been seeing so many people trying to do the same thing all the time. It's the same thing when you go into politics. Literally, they have not made a single change because they keep trying to do the same things. So, why are we going through this perpetual cycle? Sounds more like the devil, if anything. And that is where you finally see the confines of religion and politics and all of these things going on in the world right now. Why are we having to face our own reflections at these points and facing our fears and our nightmares? It's so that we can have a freedom and realize it's not what you think it is. And honestly, that is the emancipation and the freedom. That's how it no longer has that power and that force on you. That's how you become the teacher, and that's how you actually have your form of enlightenment. And it's because you dared to be the fool, and therefore because of that you made a bigger impact than you actually thought. 4 more cards actually. Looking at it from that point of view, we now see strength. That's how you actually do that. It's not actually a physical strength sometimes. Sometimes it is just saying, I don't have all the answers. Sometimes it is breaking. Sometimes it is just being honest with yourself at this point too. A lot of people do not know how to do that either. They try to lie to themselves and they try to take on too much. I am guilty of that. I will take on more than I'm actually supposed to. And then I find myself going into these manic frenzies, feeling like I did something wrong, feeling all of this guilt while I was trying to make everybody happy. And it did actually cause my major downfall. And that's also how I can speak from experience on that. And that's why I have to sometimes say it like that. And it might be brutal, it might hurt somebody's feelings, but it doesn't make it less true. Once you can see that type of strength, that's when you can fill the cups. That's when you can have that love and that light that people talk about, because they've accepted the darkness too. And therefore you find that the devil card really is just the lover's card. And at that point, it's just giving you a new sense of knowledge, having that area of acceptance, having that trust, and being able to let other people in. Being able to actually fight and have that fight for that acceptance, but really finally letting go of the sword, letting go of the fight, and just letting it finally happen so that you can have trust again. Because yes, you are enough. And believe me when I say, so many people will fight you for it. They will make you feel guilty, but that is because they are fighting their own devil. So, when you look at it like this, understand that those projections aren't personal, even though it feels very personal sometimes. And yeah, you're not going to be on your game every single day. You're not going to be perfect, and the thing is, it's actually what makes you perfect is knowing that you're not. Knowing that what makes you better is knowing that you're not. Because then once you can finally do those things to improve yourself, you're breaking a major cycle and you're facing some serious demons, and you're finally harvesting that for yourself. Y'all got some serious power on your hands, and you all are way more powerful than you think. You all have the same abilities I have. The thing is, it's more about finally letting go of the idea that you have to be something that you're not. Once you can finally look at that person in the mirror and really finally actually say you love that person and start saying some nicer things to yourself, it doesn't actually end so badly. Yes, you're going to feel pain. Yes, you're going to go through grief. Yes, you're going to have depression. Yes, you're going to lose sometimes. But that also it doesn't mean that you give up. What you do is you finally take that and you find other ways to actually make yourself happy. Don't fight yourself anymore. And honestly, with everything happening in the world, start to realize that there is actually a balance happening here. It does have to get worse before it gets better. And believe me, as someone who has been considered a minority, trust me when I say I have to hold on to that faith sometimes with myself. Because sometimes I see these things and I feel like a major injustice is done. And then I see the doom and gloom, and then I feel the pain. And that's actually another thing about being an empath is, just because you're an empath, you're going to feel the people's pain and that pressure around you, and sometimes you're going to feel like the walls are caving in on you. And then you're going to finally realize why. To let it go, to transmute it, to finally give it something else. Give the devil a name, and now you can finally close the door on it.